For everything from questions about cucumbers to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, learn about gardening, growing your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Call them anytime at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And a big good morning to you as we start another edition of the Ask Mr. Greenthumb Gardening and Real Estate Show. I am the dad, and you are...
And I'm the son, and I'm James DeFreitas. And, of course, each and every week we are here to talk about your gardening and real estate needs. And so one of the things that, I always think is good to do with the show is if you do have some gardening questions, you can always go to Stan's website at AskMrGreenthumb.com. That's AskMrGreenthumb.com. When you go to the website, one of the things you'll see at the top left corner is an Ask button. You can go and you can click on that Ask button, and you can submit questions, and you can attach photographs that you've taken with your phone. So it's a handy-dandy, really insightful tool that you can use that will allow you to get some of your questions answered, and rather than remain in ignorance, you can now have the benefit of knowing, and that's always a good thing.
And I appreciate it when you do send a photo because it makes it easier for me to identify. I mean, yes, I've been a horticulturist for 40 years, and I can identify most insects and fungus and most plants for that matter. But sometimes, people will not give the best information. And if I can see it, it just makes a difference. I know James and I were looking at a Cuban laurel the other day, and it had thrips. And we had injected the tree previously. Now, where we injected the one tree, most of those thrips, when we broke open the leaves, were dead. So that showed me that it worked. And what I liked is that I could inject the tree with a pesticide, not have to spray up over the, into the environment, because what goes up comes back down. And so I was happy about that. The other tree, they said, well, last time not to inject, we didn't, and we found a bunch of live thrips in that Cuban laurel.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, too, one of the things that, I didn't know what a thrip was. And so one of the things diagnostically, that Stan was telling me, he said, well, you got to open up the leaf because you got to remember the reason the leaf is curled over is that evolutionarily these critters have figured out a way to protect themselves and have had a more successful outcome. And so they wind up chewing the edges of the leaf or the interior parts of the leaf, and it causes the leaf to curl over, creating a nice little cocoon almost of the leaf. And, when we open it up, sure enough, it kind of looks a little bit like a flea in there. I mean, it's about that size anyway, except for it moves very differently than a flea. And so, to me, it kind of moves a little bit more like a worm almost, but not exactly like that either. It's different.
It's own... about the size of a small termite almost. Yeah, but it's black.
Black.
And in their early stages, they're white.
Okay, so it depends on when you catch it in the life cycle? And
they have what I call a raspy mouth part. So they kind of rasp the tissue as opposed to an aphid that has a sucking mouth part.
Sure.
Or some insects have little stylets where they stick their little mouth part into tissue and then they can suck the juice out. A thrip is kind of unusual, but you can see that rasping is pretty effective because that leaf does curl around, as James said, like a cocoon.
Right, and it's one of these things too that again we've discussed the actual critter that's causing the problem with the leaf, but the main reason we were out there was because the customer was complaining that they were having to blow off their deck 2 and 3 times a day, and it's because the leaves are dying because they're getting chewed on so frequently. And so again, one of the things I always like to do is to sometimes back up a bit or to circle back around to the actual problem. It wasn't that the customer understood what was actually getting them. getting the leaves, but he understood that there was a problem, or I should say they did, his husband and wife team. They understood there was a problem, but didn't know what it was, and therefore the whole reason that we came out there to do the horticultural consult was to give them the power of knowledge and finding out what their problem was, which we did. And then not only that, but we came up with an excellent treatment program for them as well. So if you have a repetitive problem that's happening in your yard or in your landscape, knowledge is definitely the thing you want. And we've never had a time now in human existence where knowledge is at your fingertips. And in this case, you can make one phone call to Stan at 727-423-4794. That's 727-423-4794. And you can set up a consult where we can come out and we can identify the problem, and we can, put you on a program that's going to help.
Yep, it's going to be good. And normally I'm getting James to do most of the work. I'm sort of the brains, and he's the beauty. But
that's not how you usually put it.
Well, I sometimes say he's the brawn, but we'll say beauty today.
I consider myself the grunt.
But, for me, after my new heart, and speaking of heart, we all are heartbroken that we've lost Joe Pipen. We may still do a tribute for him in a couple of weeks. I know there have been a number of them done here at 860 since he was a major part of the 860 family. And I've known Joe for, since he started in radio. I actually was on radio before Joe at WPLP, which was 570. And now, of course, it's also 570 happens to be in this building as well, which is kind of ironic. And Joe and I have known each other forever and a day. And, of course, normally I call us the specialty shows almost always are on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And so we were on the weekends. And back then, of course, there was a whole bunch of us. There was Electronics Doctor, and there was the legal show with Joe and
Ask the Attorney.
Ask the Attorney, which he's kept forever. And I've had the Mr. Greenthumb or Ask Mr. Greenthumb since that time as well. But so it was kind of fun. You normally see each other in the hallway, or you're getting coffee, or you're doing something. You normally don't get a great time to have a long conversation, but you do seem like you kind of get to know the person a little bit, because you say howdy. Maybe you're talking about, hey, what are those Bucks doing? Are they going to be as great this year as they were last year? Or, when are the guys going to learn to be able to throw from second or third for the Rays to first base without having to bounce it 5 times? I never had to bounce it. I could throw the ball from third base to first, and I never bounced it once in my little, career in baseball. But anyway, I'm not picking on you guys, but maybe just a little.
But again, back to Joe Pipen. Our complete condolences and sympathy to their family and everything that they are going to be going through in the next several weeks. And it's just one hell of a guy, and he was one of a kind, and he will be forever missed as a great fixture of 860 and all the different stations he was on for his career, and we'll miss him.
Yep, very, very well said. And I know that we actually were going to try to go to the funeral, but I realized we already were booked to do our radio, and I said, well, it can't be in 2 places at one time. So I did ask our favorite engineer, head of station, Joe, to pass on our condolences at the funeral.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and,
moving on to a different topic, one of the things that we spent the first few minutes here talking about gardening, so I was going to shift a little bit over to our other near and dear topic of real estate. And so one of the things I wanted to mention too is the confusion that has been taking place with, because I've got an article here, and the title of it is called "Biden Extends Eviction Ban for 60 Days." And it was written by Carrie Smith. And basically the article says, Biden administration announced a 60-day eviction ban extension. It says the new order is more limited than the old ban. It covers COVID hotspots, but that still includes an estimated 90% of U.S. renters and seemingly all of Florida. So, the reason I print out this article is that, you start looking at this and you start realizing, wait a second, it sounded like we were done with this eviction ban. We had a Supreme Court ruling on the matter, and somehow we don't. And, so it seems to me that one of the things that we're still dealing with is this idea that, renters are still kind of, getting a I'm not saying a pass, but we're not getting that handled in such a way so as to be able to move forward. And, the article goes on too. I mean, we are having an uptick in Florida. We are having more, rise in COVID cases and stuff. Now, my understanding is that, we're not having the same death rates. It seems to me that because more people have been vaccinated, we have a situation where, COVID itself has become more like a flu if you get it, if you're vaccinated. And that's always a good thing. However, it's still, one of the things I think all of us have taken into account since the beginning of this pandemic is that the masses, whatever the general masses have to think, is it has profound impacts on everybody. So the collective does have a big impact on the individual. We may all have our independent viewpoints of how COVID should be handled, and we all do. And by the way, I'm one of the few that will contend that you don't have to have a degree in biology or be an epidemiologist or a virologist to have an opinion. I think that, now that doesn't mean your opinion is valid, but I think you have a right to an opinion. But the article is basically getting at that, for good or for bad, and in my mind, that we have to allow eventually for evictions to start again. I mean, there has to be some people out there that from March of last year up until now, and then plus 60 more days, will have paid almost no rent if they're continuing to re-up their status as a renter who's not being able to change their homestead because of COVID.
And it depends on the way you see it. I'm sure a lot of folks go, well, there's these rich people who own all of these properties, and who cares if they don't get paid? But the reality is that there are a lot of folks that are entrepreneurs who, maybe bought the property, worked on the property, painted it, put a roof on, did all these things, and you're telling that person, you look at him like he's Mr. Billionaire, and in some cases they're about ready to lose their homes. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but from a legal standpoint, I've worked in, eminent domain, and I'm not an expert in eminent domain. I have the attorneys that are. To me, when you let someone, you as the government, say you can't collect the rent, then the government's going to have to start. To me, it would be no different than someone taking part of your property. Are you going to pay them for it?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some, assistance for landlords, although my understanding is that most of that money has not been distributed. So there is money out there. I'm not sure if the message of how to get to it has been impactful enough for them to understand what to do. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and a lot of information that isn't flowing to the people that need it. And of course, with that music, we're going to go pay some bills, but we sure do want you to stick around as we talk about gardening and or real estate.
If you've got some plant questions, send them to us. If you've got some real estate questions, we try to make it about as 50-50 as we can on this show. Both are important, and we want you, of course, to stay with us here on AM 860, The Answer, right here on WGUL.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Green Thumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give them a call, 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
Well, James and I both have been in the real estate game, and James is learning more about the plant game, helping me do things. And both of them are fun. I mean, most yards have plants. They have trees, have shrubs, have grass. We've got problems. And the same thing we were mentioning with those thrips earlier, it's not a once and done.
No.
Or if I treat your tree for borers, it's not a once and done. When you've got fleas on your dog, it's not a once and done.
Right, and I think that analogy is something that every pet owner can understand is that, you don't ever eradicate something. You make something better. You reduce the population. You hope to get it to zero. I mean, that's the goal. But the reality of it is it only takes one, and then boom, you have another reinfestation, and then you're treating your dog again with some more, topical drops on the back of their neck, and and the same thing can be said with the thrips. We go out there, we inject these trees. In this case, it was in the banyan family. I think you said it was a ficus nitida.
Ficus. Mm-hmm.
Ficus nitida. So I am learning.
You are.
And but the cool thing, as you were saying before in the last break, is that we're not spraying all over the foliage. We're not spraying in a way that is just saturation carpet bombing. That's probably the way that I think most people. And again, I have seen. I mean, a lot of the national lawn spraying companies do that. And I'm not sure that's all that great for the environment. But Stan and I are pretty niche in the sense that we don't do that. We go out there and we try to treat the problem in a very micro-targeted way. And that makes us a lot more environmentally friendly and good stewards of the environment, which is what we want to leave behind.
That's true.
So that's why having this, is specializing in plants, trees, and palms has been really your focus,
Yeah, it's kind of where I've gone to over the last few years. I just don't do much in the lawn business, spray stuff anymore. I can't pull a spray hose. Luckily I can get you to help on occasion, but I would rather not do any more spraying than I had to.
There's a million guys with a million trucks doing this.
I specialize where my knowledge base is.
Right.
I know things to look at like the palm the other day. Identified the magnesium by where it was on the palm. I could identify manganese deficiency on the palm.
Yeah, and that's funny too when you mentioned about the palm. And actually, I'll put a picture up when we're
in post.
In post here. I'll put a picture up that shows a typical magnesium deficiency. And that's what you said was wrong with the tree,
And you
right?
saw that yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. And what's funny about that is that when you see this photo, you'll immediately understand there's something wrong with the tree. You may not associate exactly what's wrong with the tree, but you will know that there's something not the way it should be. It's all yellow around the fronds, very characteristically yellow around the fronds on the lower level.
It's always the lower fronds when it's magnesium.
Right.
And if it's on the top, it's manganese can be a thing called frizzle top.
Man on top.
And there can also be, of course, you may have other elements that can be deficient too, especially if your pH is off. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons when there used to be home shows, when you and I did home shows, we'd often bring our pH tester and I'd have you doing some pH testing for folks that brought their soil. And I was always glad when they didn't drop their soil into my coffee. But
and they always would bring I brought you 10 pounds. Is that going to be
coffee can?
Is this going to be enough? And again, just like when you go for a urine analysis, I think they need 40 drops. And the same thing with us. No more than a film canister size. And of course, I say film canister size. What does that mean anymore? Well, no more than an inch by an inch. You don't need anything. Film canister size was really descriptive 30 years ago. I don't know of anybody that's using film anymore.
Yeah, young people today wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Right.
They'd go, hey, that guy really is old.
Yeah.
We're talking about his son. No.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the things, I printed out another article, and this one is in your wheelhouse in that it's horticultural related. But the title of the article says, "It Ain't Easy Being Green, the Challenge of Gardening in Florida." And, it's pretty interesting stuff because, it says, it goes on to say that, it's not as easy as you'd think it would be, because it's talking about the subtropics, and it means that, our climate encourages lush plant growth, but it can also make it tough for a lot of familiar varieties that a lot of people are used to growing up north. And, and they go on to say that, I guess this, one of the ladies from the Naples Gardening Club, Connie Wilson, a certified master gardener, was talking about, the lack of season diversity in Florida. It's different here,
Yeah, we don't have the definite seasons that you have up north.
Right. And so, so then they go on to talk about, well, summer isn't the best time for vegetable gardens, and it says that maybe you should try thinking of planting some herbs and, and so that the pollinators, can start doing their things. Mm-hmm. and we start to think beyond August, because that's, and again, this show will obviously is going to air at the end of another couple of weeks from now, so I need to be thinking about towards the end of August, even though it's not even mid-August yet. So, but another thing that I thought was interesting too, and I'd never heard of this before, they're talking about something called Florida Everglades tomato. Never heard of it.
It's a variety. It's supposed to be a little more resistant to some problems, and it's supposed to take the heat a little bit better.
And that's exactly what this article was talking about.
See, I know a thing or two about a thing or two.
Right.
But and that's important. I think they're always looking for varieties that will do better with our tough conditions. And let's face it, our conditions are tough in Florida. You talk about overwintering up north. We talk about over-summering in Florida. When it's 90-some degrees, or you said the other day, I think they had a record of in Sicily.
Yeah, in Sicily, 120 degrees. It's a record. It broke a record. And, as Donald Trump would say, it's a record.
It's a record.
It's a record.
We don't want that record here for Florida. Thank God we get a lot of rain, which cools us off in Florida.
Right.
I mean, I know sometimes it's almost too much of a good thing, it seems. Mm-hmm. But at least when those clouds come on and you get some rain and you cool the atmosphere, it's like a big air conditioner. And that is a good thing. Plus, your air conditioner doesn't run, you don't see the wheel going like, a mouse on a wheel.
And that's why it's so important to save your trees. I mean, it's easy to call out people to cut them down. There's a million people that do that, and people we even recommend. But again, you'd rather them come out to trim the tree, keep the tree healthy, and keep that tree providing shade for your property so that you can have that benefit of not necessarily having to keep your house, it's at 72 with the air conditioner running full bore, as you just said. So,
sure.
That's why trees and plants and stuff are so important. Keep those things going, And with that music, of course, we're going to go for a break, but we'll be here, of course, talking about gardening and or real estate. And,
we can talk about trees, plants, flowers, and your favorite real estate.
Absolutely. We'll do that all in a minute.
You stay with us as the Plant Talk and Real Estate Talk continues right here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate auctions? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online, floridaauctionteam.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial problems with flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And I am Stan DeFreitas, Mr. Greenthumb, and you are?
And of course, I'm James DeFreitas, and we are here each and every week to talk about gardening and or real estate matters. And one of the things I was going to mention, too, we were talking about this at the break, is, we primarily focus on auctions and real estate. Okay, so that's primarily what we do. Now, it's not the only thing that we do. I mean, we've got several people out there that, we're acting as buyer's agents for, and a lot of people that primarily focused on just acting as a selling agent are now having to switch over and do some buying agent work as well, because that's what's out there. And again, whatever there is more of, that is what you will do more of. And whatever there is less of, you will do less of those. And so that's just the nature of the business. And again, we're still in a very depressed, the amount of actual listings.
Low inventory.
It's very low inventory. So when I say depressed, I don't mean depressed in the sense that the market's not doing well or very hot. It's still very hot. But it's not, it's hot for sellers. It's lukewarm for buyers in the sense that they don't like the idea of paying the highest high, which is where they are right now in my mind. Again, I say the highest high, but as we've joked in the past, come back tomorrow if you want to see more expensive real estate.
So the same property is going to be worth more. And, that kind of happened to us even just a week or so ago. I had one agent who called me up and she goes, well, my client's going to back out of the deal. And, she said, no one else is bringing you this. And it turned out the next day we got an offer for more.
And it was a better deal.
A better deal, a much cleaner deal.
Less concessions being asked for. And I will say, too, I mean, one of the things, us focusing in real estate auctions, I think there is this overwhelming sense that we're just giving away the property or that the seller has to sell. And sometimes that can be true. Okay, but overwhelmingly, it's not true. And most of the time, I want to convey this to, our listeners, is that real estate auctions are another way to sell. Almost every agent in the last year and a half probably feels like a little mini auctioneer because they're sitting back and going, "Oh, I got a bid for this, I got a bid for that, got a bid." And the next thing you know, they're going, "Oh man, I got competing bids, and I got to look at each one very carefully."
Sure.
Now, again, when we're actually doing live calling bids on auctions, it's very fast paced, it's high intensity, and it's a lot of fun. What they're doing is very slow paced, a bid and people throwing in an offer and then having to convey that. I mean, it's very slow paced, but it's a very similar process, just on a much longer time scale.
Sure.
So, again, the other invention, I mean, everybody has something that they learned from on this COVID pandemic. And one of the things that we came up with that I haven't seen anybody else do in real estate auctions is a silent auction. It works well in a couple of ways. One, if you take on a property that hasn't been exposed to the market, this is a great way to get a real-world test to determine if the pricing is correct. Because sometimes we do get sellers that think that their house, I mean, it seems like more and more now we get sellers that say, "Oh, my house is worth $1 million." Well, everybody's house seems like they think it's worth $1 million, but it turns out not always the case. And
in fact, most cases not the case.
Right. In most cases, it's not the case. So one of the things that's really cool is we can set up a short duration silent auction. Now, if we get the price that the seller was looking for, that's great. Okay, then, I'm happy.
Problem solved.
Problem solved. If we don't, and we get no offers on a property because the seller was adamant about a price, well, problem solved as well, because now I have ammunition to go back to the seller and say, "Hey, we really didn't receive any offers anywhere near your projected price. So can we have a new conversation, one that is more in line with what the market's offering, because here's the real world data." And I think that in and of itself is a compelling argument to get the seller to think about things a little differently. And so, so that's a useful tactic. And then the other thing I would say about a silent auction is if you can get a price priced correctly from the beginning, if a seller wants to see what they can do, then it's a level playing field. It isn't this, I get an offer in today and then I take the better offer 15 minutes later because I like that this one isn't asking for this concession or that concession. And again, most of the real estate auctions that you're going to encounter, and ours included, will be no contingencies. No contingency. Well, it just means that we're not going to write up the contract based on the idea of it appraising, or it's not going to be based on the idea of an inspection. So, at the end of the day, these are the major pitfalls that cause a lot of listings that go pending to fail and have to be returned back to the market. So if we can eliminate some of those for the seller, it's that much more certain that this process is going to go forward and close, which is what we want.
Sure.
So, so one of the things when I say, yes, you can pay for an auction with financing, that tends to throw people off a little bit because they've always heard, "Oh, it's cash only." No, that's not always true. What I will say is, look, the contract that we're going to fill out, it's going to say it's not contingent upon an appraisal. And they'll go, well, how does that work? Well, I don't care how you pay for it. I don't care if you come to the closing table with cash or if you're using a bank to pay for it. Doesn't matter to me. If the bank doesn't want to give you the full amount to pay for it, you just bring the difference in cash to closing.
We prefer no gold fillings.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And don't bring the ringer bag. Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, that's what that means. And and if you want to back out of the deal, well, unfortunately, in an auction property, there has to be some teeth. So in this case, in an auction property, often what will happen is you will forfeit your escrow deposit, and that hurts. But at the end of the day, my seller doesn't like the idea of waiting a month, 45 days to find out you can't close because you didn't either have the money or you couldn't get financing. So my seller, in my mind, is do something.
Sure.
So, and it's one of the few times in a real estate transaction where the seller will get compensated for their time. And almost every other time, doesn't happen. The seller just eats the time as if his time doesn't mean anything, and along with the agent.
I know we took over a case like that up another county up, and there was a problem where they had tied them up for months and months Finally, the day before the guy thought he was going to closing, the buyer goes, "Oh, by the way, the bank turned me down. I can't buy it."
Oh, that was the Arapica sale.
Arapica sale.
Yeah.
We went in, and it's funny. We put up a sign, and I had a contract the same day that we had the sign up. The person called me and said, "Hey, it was an offer over what they wanted,
significantly over."
And so we said, "Hey," I called the client up and said, "This is a great offer, and it's a cash offer. It's ready. Do you want to take it?" He said, "Yes, I do."
Right. Yeah. So there's another good point too. Is the buy it now option on the table? Well, obviously, we're not silly. I mean, again, if you're acting in the best interest of your seller, odds are it's probably a good policy. So I would always say, look, I mean, in a lot of ways, Stan and I operate like eBay. There's the auction process where you can bid and participate that way. There's the live auction process where you can participate that way. And then if you're a type of buyer who doesn't like uncertainty, well, then there's that other way where
buy it now,
where you can choose to buy it now. And again, we probably shouldn't use the buy it now. It's probably copywritten by eBay.
Well, we're just explaining a process by someone else.
Correct. We're explaining a generalized process. So that we have everybody covered. I mean, it's not like people couldn't buy the thing and get it right now if they want it. But again, it has to be a significant amount that meets or beats the reserve. And
Sure.
if it doesn't, then it's thanks for playing and no.
Yeah. And right now I'm amazed, even, the last little deal we had where people would call up going, "I'm going to offer you half the amount, but it's cash." Mm-hmm. And often I'd say, "Well, look, I've already talked to the homeowner."
That's a great point.
And the homeowner said, "Don't bother, I'm not going to accept it."
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing. In real estate, what all of the new agents learn is you have to present all offers. Okay, and that's true. But one difference is in an auction, I do not have to present an offer if it doesn't meet the reserve price. If it doesn't meet the reserve price, I don't have to present that offer because it's stipulated in the contract paperwork that I don't have to. Because I already know the seller is going to reject that because he already said he wasn't going to accept it unless it was over that amount.
Sure.
So that's a very big distinction between what we do and what a standard listing, how an agent would operate. So I want to make that clear. And I would also I'll take 30 seconds out of our show here to mention something else too. And again, I'm not going to say it's an outright scam, but I am going to say that it's not a good look for the industry. There are buyers out there who I guess are investment buyers, and they're just they're looking, they're bottom feeders.
Sure.
So if you have a place that's going to go, let's just take a mythical number out of the sky. If you have a number of 100,000 that you want to get for your home, they have computer software that will pre-program in a silly amount for that home, 55,000 cash today on the barrel, and it'll even say something silly like that in the subject title.
Sure.
Okay, and it's just silly, but they know that if they send out 3,000 or 4,000 offers in a day, that statistically they may get one or two.
Sure.
And if you get one or two to come in and buy someone's home, then they consider that a win.
Sure.
But I'm saying this to educate the general public. You don't want any of these offers because all they are making other people wealthy at the expense of your equity. So remember that. They're getting wealthy at the expense of your equity, and that should never happen. Right. And that's why you always want a qualified real estate agent representing you to say, hey, don't do it, don't take that, you're worth more.
Yep, and I think that's something, I see it advertised all over right now. Mm-hmm. There's companies out there, and they'll go
28 days.
We can get you enclosed as little as 3 weeks. Well, yeah, maybe if it's a cash deal, and also they're going no closings, no showings, no anything hardly. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't have showings, you don't have open houses.
Oh, I think you're talking about Mike Madrid.
Well, no, there's a bunch out there, but I'm just going to say the problem I have.
No relation to Mike Spain.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah, I got you. All right, took me a second to catch up on that one, but that's exactly what I was thinking. if you're going to tell me that there's no anything, you're probably not getting top dollar for your house.
Absolutely. And when we come back from break, one of the things I want to talk about is another article where it's talking about bathrooms over countertops. And I do want to talk about that a little bit because it's an interesting topic.
Sounds interesting. You stay with us as the Plant Talk Real Estate Talk continues here on AM 860. The Answer.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Green Thumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give them a call. 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
You know, on that same line that we were going on just before the break set, I was thinking, there used to be many, many years ago the guy who would go, "Oh, dare to be great. You can come on and buy this for no money down, no money," you know, and it made it sound like you could go in and take this old dilapidated property if you knew nothing, and all of a sudden you're going to know how to be a plumber, a roofer, a painter. And for a lot of folks who did that, they'd go out and get the old junker somewhere. Well, you better learn how to do electricity, how to do plumbing, how to do the roof. It isn't just, and I thought it was funny because the guy had an accent in the old days too. Not to pick on him, but it was like, "You two can make billions of dollars just like I did." And you're thinking, okay, well, that's nice that you're going to share that with us. But how did you do it?
Right. And not only that, but I mean, people don't usually have the equity or the time in order to do those kinds of things. And, you know, and then add the skill set that's required too. I mean, to rehab a house now, it takes months. And it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of highly skilled craftsmen to do it. And most of the time, you know, a lot of unlicensed work gets done, and it doesn't always get done correctly. So the cheaper option usually isn't the cheaper option when you have to repay someone later to actually fix the thing correctly.
Make sure the fire insurance is up.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say another thing too. Stan and I one time showed a house, very nice looking house. You know, it was right there in Clearwater, right off of McMullen Booth Road, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a really nice looking home. We liked it, and but then we realized that the home had been on and off the market several times, and we looked at it and you know, we're trying to figure out, well, why is it being shown so frequently? Why is it going pending so frequently? Why is it back on the market so often? Well, it turns out that it was show ready. It was made show ready, and the problem is there was nothing really ready about the home.
Right.
When you would turn on the faucet in the bathroom, water would start coming out of some kind of orifice in the garage.
Yeah.
You know, the pipes you'd turn on the pipes and the pipes would bang. So there was no strapping done or anything like that to prevent the pressure from the piping turning on and off. There was settling issues.
If you rolled the ball, it like went to one side in a hurry, not just a little bit of a...
Right. So you had settling problems, you had level problems. They did all kinds of things to make it look nice, and they were trying to hide the money pit. And that was a property that had sat on the market for months and months and months. And so it started a debate in my mind that was troublesome, is that once a house has been inspected, it seemed to me, and again, I'm not a lawyer, and I profess that, but I'm going on an ethical debate here. And I always think that if ethically it sounds like it would be the best thing to protect the general public, then that's probably what we should be doing. Now, I've had a lot of people tell me I'm totally, totally wrong in my thinking. But if a home's been inspected multiple times and the seller knows that there are these problems with the home and then fails to disclose these things, I don't know why, in my mind, that the inspection report doesn't somehow become public record. and yet it isn't. We just keep on spending more and more and more and more money to pay inspectors to re-inspect the same property that's already been looked at the week before for a potential buyer. Now, I've been told, oh, well, it's a private deal between two people and da-da-da-da-da. But my question is the general public served best by that?
Well, certainly an ethics violation if you know something and you knowingly
and it's
don't disclose it.
And it's probably fraud, too, on the seller's part.
Sure.
And then, so my beef was with the selling agent, as I said, well, hold on. I told you about all these problems, and then I see you're relisting the home, but you didn't update anything in your property disclosure form, and yet you're still selling the home as if you didn't know about any of these problems. And the agent acted like I was totally out of my mind, that I had 3 heads and was from Mars. Okay.
Sure.
And I find that when you point out things that are very useful information that would generally protect the general public, you tend to get that, oh my goodness, you're from Mars and you have 3 heads. So, but anyway, I don't want to be a liar, because we did end the last break saying that we would talk about this article about bathrooms over countertops. That's the title of this article. And what's interesting is that this comes from a article that was written out of Jacksonville, and it's talking about the idea of what they did is somebody put into a computer program, and they analyzed 43 million words across all listings in the United States. So this is interesting. I like when we have some data-driven information.
Sure.
And what they found out was the most popular search terms in 2019, the search terms in a general home listing were granite countertops, hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances. These were the 3 big ones.
Right.
But that's changed. And so apparently what's now changed is, updated kitchen, updated bathrooms. Having those terms be in the listing are certainly, that's for 2020 and 2021, that is the new focus, is making sure that the bathrooms are renovated.
Well, that is something people do pay attention to when you go into a home to look at.
Correct, because the article quotes and says, at home, the bathroom transcended its primary function, becoming the only truly private room in a perpetually full home. And in order to venture outside, the car became indispensable. So naturally, a garage or a parking space became equally vital. Even when breaking down the most used keywords by living areas, one aspect that stood out was the increase in keywords that promised an extra bit of living space. And that includes the bathroom.
Sure.
So, when people are out there and they're thinking of doing these renovations to their homes, I know countertops are important. But equally important, probably going forward now, is the bathrooms being in good shape.
Especially if you got those old green or pink tiles that have been there since,
'01. Exactly. And there are many homes, especially in St. Petersburg, Seminole, any areas where you've had a lot of building that was done a long time ago, you're going to find, and let me also educate some people, when you go into these bathrooms and you think you're going to take a chisel and a hammer.
I was going to say, I grew up in one of those bungalows that had the old pink tiles.
Right. If you have a property that was made in the 40s or even the 50s, you're going to find that your little chisel and your hammer are going to create nice sparks.
Dink. Yeah.
But that's about all it's going to do. Get ready to go rent yourself a mini jackhammer if you're going to take apart a bathroom in that way, and you'll be happy that you did. So I'll save you some time, and yeah, you'll have to add a trip to Lowe's or Home Depot to rent a tool, although I don't know if Lowe's rents tools, but I know Home Depot does. Anyway, they're not paying us, so I shouldn't mention Home Depot. But anyway, moving on to a gardening topic that I thought would be near and dear to our hearts, and we want to say we absolutely love Tom McCubbin with Better Lawns and Gardens. He's been doing that program for 33 years in Orlando, and he officially announced his retirement and that he will no longer be doing the show. And he's stepping down from the host role, and I guess a new lady from IFAS, Teresa Watkins, will be taking over for doing his show.
Met Tom a number of times. You did too, up in...
I sure did. Met him up there in Ohio.
And his lovely wife. They were very nice folks.
Yeah, so they'll be stepping down from their duties of doing the, of doing their Better Lawns and Gardens program, which has been on forever and a day.
Tom worked for IFAS, and I did too.
Yeah, so they're probably going to concentrate. My guess would be if we had Tom and his lovely wife in, they'd probably concentrating on more traveling and seeing the world as soon as the world opens back up completely from the new scary Delta variant.
I remember she was doing some painting, and I was drinking some wine, and she wanted the little bit of wine I had left in my cup up in, I think, Indianapolis. or maybe it was, where were we?
We were in Ohio.
Ohio. Okay.
We were in Marysville, Ohio, the home of the Scotts Miracle-Gro Weed Company.
And she wanted it for some painting she was going to do. She was using all natural ingredients for her painting, which, I had a little bit of red wine, and I said, here, you can have this. And she was very happy.
Yeah.
I admired her. She had a real ability to use everything, and I always admire that. I don't think I always do that, but I like that. It's like reading.
She crumpled up a newspaper a couple of times, swatted me on the nose, and said, "Stop licking my paintings."
That's right. You enjoyed those paintings.
Well, you told me it was wine, and she was using it for painting, and I said, well, that seems like a waste of good wine to me, but okay.
And they were also backed by our fellow Black Cow, and who we expect to come back in the fall.
Yeah.
And, it's a good product. Someone did take me to task the other day about peat moss. And I said, peat moss has been here forever. It's a great thing to help, especially with our sandy soil.
Sure.
Now, where you can add organic matter, like leaves and grass clippings and all the other good stuff, and Black Cow, great. But if you want to use some peat, he was basically telling me, you're destroying the world.
Right. And I'm grateful that he actually gave that comment to us in a way, because it made me do a little bit of research. And it turns out that there are many companies out there that are actually harvesting peat in a sustainable way. So what I would say is use peat from a company that is going to do it in a sustainable way. They're planting more than they're taking, and therefore you don't have to feel guilty about using it in your landscape or using it as something for your plants. So kudos to him for bringing it up, because I didn't even know there was a debate about it, and it made me become more knowledgeable, even though he was incorrect, because he was making it universally, that being an issue for everybody.
Well, it's like so many people who say it's my way or my way, and if you don't think the way I do, you're totally wrong and going to hell.
That's right. Well, again, we've come to the end of another wonderful, great Ask Mr. Greenthumb Gardening and Real Estate show, and we sure appreciate your time listening to us.
Make sure you're with us next Sunday, as the show will be here again, and we appreciate you being there.